A massive trade has gone down in the NBA today as Kyrie Irving has been dealt away from the Brooklyn Nets to the Dallas Mavericks. And as most Raptors fans know, Toronto's expect to be big players in this year's trade deadline in terms of potentially making moves, being buyers, being sellers. We still don't know at this point, but the Raptors have been linked to a bunch of teams with a bunch of players and potential deals going down. And with this Kyrie Irving blockbuster happening today, I'm going to break down this video why that could have a negative impact on the Raptors' ability to get major returns in this trade deadline. So without further ado, let's jump into the topic. And basically, for people that didn't see, I broke it down on Courtside Digest. The whole NBA fandom is talking about it right now, but Kyrie Irving has been dealt away from the Brooklyn Nets to the Dallas Mavericks in return for Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and a first-round pick, and a couple seconds future draft capital. But I'm not breaking down this whole deal. If you want to see that full breakdown, check out my video I put out on Courtside Digest. But this deal does have serious implications on the Toronto Raptors. Now, the first thing everyone's looking at, which I broke down in our video yesterday, is could we land Kevin Durant? I'm saying no. I don't think the Raptors are in a position right now. We don't have the depth to where we would be competitors to make sense. You know, if Kevin Durant was brought into our team, especially with the assets we'd have to give up to potentially compete for a title this year, which you're hoping would be the case given Kevin Durant's a 33-year-old vet. I know we had the quest for Kevin Durant. Any excuse I get to play this animation, I'm going to play it. You know, we had this quest going the whole summer trying to acquire KD, but given how this season's rolled out, given our lack of bench, we aren't in a position to potentially acquire KD. So I'm throwing that out the window right now until other reports, rumors, or actual deal gets happening. But I've seen a lot of people, once this deal went down, say, hey, you know, the other major point guard that was expected to be dealt ahead of this year's trade deadline's off the market. This could help the Raptors in a potential bidding war for a guy like Fred VanVleet or even another guard in Gary Trent Jr. And, you know, different teams looking to make those moves. And while that might be the case, while we might get a little bit of a better offer from the LA Clippers now because they didn't land Kyrie Irving or something like that, sure, that's all cool. But for me personally, I'm not expecting big returns from Gary Trent Jr. given all the reports that have come out, and not even that big ones from Fred VanVleet as of late, because, you know, reports have come out that the expected market value for Gary Trent Jr. given his free agent status this offseason is a protected first-round pick or 2 second-round picks. So I'm not even contemplating throwing Gary Trent Jr. into a trade if that's the return we're going to get. So throw him out the window right now. But Fred VanVleet's another guy that, sure, you know, maybe the Clippers could throw in some decent players. You know, they have Luke Kennard, Zubac, future late first-round picks, but I don't think the Clippers are going to be that interested. The Suns, maybe. A report has come out today that they're not interested in dealing away Chris Paul, so I don't think they'd make a win-now move in terms of, you know, bringing in Fred VanVleet to have that small backcourt of Chris Paul and Fred VanVleet, you know, running their show down there in Phoenix. So the two potential, and the Lakers don't really have a lot that I'm that much interested in. So, sure, the point guard market might be more available. I think the real play that the Toronto Raptors are likely going to make, likely to sort of break down, is potentially dealing away OG Anunoby and getting a massive haul in return for him, and then shaping your roster based on that big return. And a report has come out now from Agent Wojnarowski, basically indicating that the Phoenix Suns are prepared to pursue Brooklyn Nets star Kevin Durant should he become available, according to league sources. Now, the Phoenix Suns are a team that has been linked to OG Anunoby a lot over the past week or so, since all the reports, rumors that he wants out, OG wants out, that he's likely going to get dealt have popped up. And other teams that have been interested, you know, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Suns, you know, these types of teams are all teams that were interested in Kevin Durant this offseason. And now, with Kyrie Irving getting dealt, sure, they got a decent return back. I thought they did pretty well for themselves, the Brooklyn Nets, and getting Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith back in Brooklyn. But personally, I don't see Kevin Durant being happy with this team long term. I don't see him being that interested in playing with the likes of Ben Simmons, who's afraid to shoot the basketball right now as his co-star. And, you know, sure, Watanabe, Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, they're cool 3-and-D guys. That isn't a championship caliber roster they have down there in Brooklyn. KD already requested a trade this offseason. I'd expect him to want out this year as well, whether ahead of this trade deadline or worse for the Raptors during the summer. So this is why it could be very bad for Toronto. As that report sort of indicated, teams might see the ability to acquire a big win that's really game-changing for their organizations, right? The Memphis Grizzlies can acquire Kevin Durant. If the Phoenix Suns, the New Orleans Pelicans can acquire Kevin Durant without having to give up a lot of win-now guys, they could really assert themselves as championship favorites, whether this season or next year. And say he gets traded this deadline, right? Phoenix Suns, all these teams, they're going to hold out their draft picks. They're going to try and use those assets to acquire Kevin Durant rather than, being willing to give them away for an OG Anunoby, who wouldn't be that much of an upgrade comparatively to Kevin Durant. So why would the Phoenix Suns make a deal right now that gives us 3 first-round picks and maybe a young guy on their roster if Kevin Durant could be available this offseason or later ahead of this trade deadline? It just doesn't really make sense for them to do that, which I completely get. Even though I'm an OG homer, I think they should, he has a lot of value out there in the open market. The New Orleans Pelicans, right? If they could get Kevin Durant for like Brandon Ingram and a couple of picks, why would they trade those sort of assets for OG Anunoby right now, especially where he's on a bigger contract than some of those guys, right? Like, that's where my sort of head's at. So when this Kyrie Irving trade went down, right, especially, I was hoping it was going to be later, closer to the trade deadline, so the Raptors could sort of make their moves and figure out what's going on. And that's the risk you run, right? All of the reports have indicated the Raptors are going to wait till the last second to figure out whether they're going to be buyers or sellers. And, you wait this long, the market changes, and the Raptors were in a really good place to potentially make a move, mid last week before all this Kyrie Irving drama happened. And now we run the risk of teams wanting to hold on to their assets to, for maybe this summer, if Kevin Durant becomes available at that point, or if he becomes available later at this trade deadline, rather than willing to spend it on an OG Anunoby or any of the Toronto Raptors assets that we currently have on this team. Now, does that mean no deal could potentially happen? Does that mean no team will be willing to buy at this point rather than waiting off season? No. Right? There's a lot of teams in the middle of the pack jockeying for positions with tight championship windows that could look to acquire OG Anunoby pretty quickly. Obviously, the Dallas Mavericks are out on that sort of position right now. The Blazers, I don't think they'd have a lot of hope for acquiring Kevin Durant, so they'd probably still be interested. And who knows? The Pelicans, the Grizzlies still have that level of interest. But it's going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher for Masai Ujiri to finesse with us having sort of the only key big wing that could really be a game changer for a potential organization. But let me know if you guys agree with my sort of take right there. I've seen a lot of people say that, Kyrie's off the market now, so we still are back to having the best players. But my initial reaction is that the Raptors are in a little bit of a worse position to potentially get quality assets back if we are going to be sellers ahead of this trade deadline than they were maybe last Thursday or Wednesday. But let me know your guys' take on that in the comment section below. And if you guys are interested in betting on the Toronto Raptors, they have a game against the Grizzlies tonight, right? It looks like Jaw and Jaren Jackson potentially might be injured. Definitely check out the Cool Bet Sportsbook. It's their sportsbook regulated in Ontario, available all across Canada, and you can bet on every single Toronto Raptors game, NBA game, and really any sporting event in general. So shout out to CoolBet. They got great odds. They got some special futures going on with LeBron James, him potentially when getting the scoring record. He will get the scoring record, but lots of stuff you can bet on using their app. So use the link down below to sign up. But folks, you guys are the best to make this far. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.